Kakadosh Boker Or, Masechet Avodah Zarah Daf Yomi Daf Ayin Gimel Avodah 73a1. Says the Mishnah. We are starting on the Mishnah on the top. Says the Mishnah, Yain Nesech Asur Ve'oser Bechol Shu. Yain Nesech is going to be Asur Bana'ah, and it's going to prohibit in any amount whatsoever. Yain Beyain, Umayim Bemayim, Kol Shu. The same halacha would apply, Yain Nesech, that gets mixed up with other wine of a ter, or mayim, which was done avodah zarah, like mayim nesech, gets mixed up with other mayim. Bechol shu, also in any amount. Why? It's min memino, same species, so it's in any amount. It's going to prohibit yaim, mayim, but wine and water and wine, right? It's going to be noten tam. Check the taste. So he says zeh kelal. This is a general rule. Min bemino, bemashu, veshelo bemino. Benoten tam. He comes and he says like this. He says the general rule is min bemino is going to be bemashu, right? Sometimes you find people min bemino. Yeah, so what does that mean? Mashu, any amount. Shelo bemino noten tam. Says the Gemara. Kiata Rav Dimi Amar Rabbi Yochanan. When Rav Dimi came from Eretz Yisrael to Babel, he said the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Remember, Rabbi Yochanan was in Eretz Yisrael. And so Rav Dimi comes and he said in his name, if you're pouring yain nesech from a chavit, from a barrel to the pit, afilu kol hayom kulo, even if it's going to be the entire day, rishon batel. Every tipa that falls in is going to be batel in the yain kasher, in the bor, and therefore it's going to be mibatlot, which means every tipa is batel. Tipa goes in, batel. Continues going, every tipa is batel. Tanam, we learned in the Mishnah, yain nesech asur v'oseh b'chol shu. My love davka nafal isur go heter. We're not talking about that isur fell into heter. So therefore, if isur didn't fall into heter, why don't we say the same name? That it should be rishon batel. What does that mean? Every drop that comes in first, when you're pouring it in, should become batel, and therefore there's no problem. So answers the Gemara, no. The kanafi leter lego isura. The heter fell into the isur. So Tashima, we're going to try to bring a proof then. We said that when you have wine and water getting mixed together, so then what happens? Noten tam. Check the taste. My lover, we're not talking about the kanafil chamra di isura lemaya de hetera, that the wine of isur fell into water of heter. So says the Gemara, lo. The kanafil chamra de hetera lemaya de isura, that the yain of heter fell into the water of isur. Okay? So in such a case, right, the Mishnah is coming to teach you that since it's going to be min mishenamino, right, he says it's not going to prohibit it. Okay, says the Gemara, now if you're going to tell me that the Reisha, the first case, is talking about water of Isur, Seifa nami b'mayed Isura. So then the Seifa is also talking about water of Isur. How do you get water of Isur? Yeah? With the thing. Yeah? Dreaming about his dinner in Harbor Grill, I think. One more time. Water of Isur nitzok chibur. Yeah, he comes and he says the reason why is because the water was brought for Avodah Zarah. That's called maim nesech, not yain nesech, maim nesech. So he says if the Reisha is talking about water of Isur, so to the Seifa is also talking about water of Isur. So he says Viktani Seifa, and we learned in the Seifa, maim biyain noten tam. So if it's going to be minoten tam, right, which means that the water that which was done for Avodah Zarah, right, got mixed up with yain of eter. And it still is noten tam. Now, according to him, why? Rishon batel berov. Rishon batel, meaning every single tipa goes in, right? And then it's going to become batel. So, Rav Dimi is going to tell you, Kula matniti netera lego isura. The entire Mishnah is talking about heter falling into isur. The Reisha de kanafil chamra de etera lemaya de isura. And the Reisha is talking about where wine of heter fell into the water of isur. The Seifa de kanafil maya de etera lechamra de isura. And the Seifa is talking about where you had, right, water of eter falling into wine of Isur. Okay? Fine. So, Kiyata Rav Yitzchak bar Yosef. So, Rav Yitzchak bar Yosef comes from Eretz Yisrael to Babel. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, he said the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Hame'arei yain nesech mitzarzur katan lebor. When you're going to do irui, yain nesech, from a pit, from a jug to a pit, afilu kol hayom kulo, even the entire day, rishon batel. The yain of Isur is going to be batel, right? Because of the yain kasher in the bor. Meaning the entire day you're just pouring in yain nesech. But since you're doing it drop by drop, so what happens is it keeps on becoming batel, right? Says the Gemara, it's only going to be if it's going to be a small jug. That it's not going to be that much, right? Aval chavit. But if it's going to be chavit, that it's a big splash, meaning it's not a small little, how do you call it when you're pouring? There's like a stream, not a stream. There's like a small flow of water, right? Or a flow of wine. But here, if it's going to be a very big flow of wine, it's not going to be batel. Okay? Kiata Ravin. Yeah, that's what you're looking up again. Kiata Ravin. Yeah, when Ravin came from Eretz Yisrael to Babel, he said the name of Yochanan. Yain nesech shenafal leבור v'nafal sham kiton yain shel eter ki'ilu eno. Kashar hamayim ravin alav mvatzlin oto. He comes and he says like this: when you have yain nesech that falls into inside of a pit of yain of eter, and then all of a sudden there's a flask of water that falls inside of it. Now the water is enough in order to be mvatel the yain nesech. So we look at the yain of eter as if it's not there, and then what we do is that the water is mevatel the wine, because if you remember, we said min b'mino is not batel. So the min b'mino was the wine with wine. You had yain of eter, yain of isur. It gets mixed up. Everything's asur, right? Min b'mino, right? Is b'mashu, but the water that fell into it could be mevatel the yain nesech. So therefore, he comes and he says, so we look at the wine kilu, it's not there, and then it's going to annul it. When Shmuel bar Yehuda came, he said the name of Yochanan lo shanu ela b'shenafal kiton shel mayim tchila. That's only if the kiton fell in first. But if it didn't fall in first, right? So then it becomes nior. What does that mean? Ki'ilu, the wine got mixed up with the kosher wine. The yain nesech got mixed up with the kosher wine, and then it becomes asur everything. And therefore, it's not going to help now that you're going to have water come in afterwards to be mvatel the yain nesech. It doesn't help. Okay, there was another girsado, another version of this text. Some people actually learned it on the Mishnah, right? That what she says on the Mishnah. What does that mean? Yain biyain, we said it's going to be kolshu. Amar Mishmur bar Yehuda says Mishmur bar Yochanan lo shal shalom fal sham kiton shel mayim. That's only if they didn't fall the kiton of mayim. But if it was a kiton shel mayim that actually fell inside of it, and it could be annulling it, we look at the yain eter that it's not there, and then it's going to be batel. Meaning, I'm going to forget about the yain, which is mino, and then it's going to be batel everything else. What's the difference whether I'm going to teach it on our Mishnah or I'm going to teach it on the words of Ravin? So he says, we don't need that it happened first. That means that the water fell in first. But the one that learned it on Ravin, we need that the water falls in first, and only afterwards will the wine come and fall in. Yeah? Itmar, it was stated. Yeah? If you pay attention to today, then you can continue to do chazarot on yesterday. Itmar, it was stated, yain nesech shenafal lebor. Yeah, he comes and he says, when you have yain nesech that comes and falls into a pit. Yeah, bur. No, bor, sorry. Yeah, v'nafal sham kiton shel mayim. Right? And all of a sudden, it fell in a kiton of water. Ein gimel amubet, 73b. To be or not to be? That's the question. Yeah? Amar Hizkiah, says Hizkiah, Higdilu be'isur, if the water and the wine, they get mixed up together, asur. Higdilu beheter, right? He says, if it's going to be that Higdilu beheter, mutar, it's going to be mutar. Rabbi Yochanan comes and he says, afilu higdilu be'isur, it's going to be mutar. Meaning, even if the yain isur fell at the end, it's still going to be asur. But it's still going to be mutar, meaning that even though it fell at the end, it didn't fall at the beginning. Right? That means immediately once it falls in, right, he comes and he says it's going to be mevatel v'mayim, and it's not going to be yoser, the other wine, which is inside the pit. So Elmaleh, Rabbi Yomi, Rabbi Zarah, Leima Chizkiah, Rabbi Yochanan, Bepluka. Why don't we just say that this is a machloket? Chizkiah and Rabbi Yochanan is the same machloket between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbanan Kamipalgeh. Why? Let's listen carefully. The Tanan, we learned in the Mishnah, Seor shel chulin v'shel truma shenaflu letoch ha'isa. Yeah, everybody's listening. Seor of chulin and truma that fell into the isa of chulin. So you got chulin, truma. Who could eat chulin? Everybody. Who could eat the truma? Only a real kohen. Yeah. Lo bazeh kedei lechametz, velo bazeh kedei lechametz. Yeah. He comes and he says, yeah, which one? He says, each one, right? He comes and he says this. which not either or is not going to be kiveh lechametz, meaning each one on its own cannot do it. V'nitztarfu, right? But what happens is that they combine, right? They combine together. V'chimtzu. And then what happens is they come and they are mechametz when they combine together. Rabbi Eliezer says, achar ha'acharon ani ba, which means everything is going to be talui, which comes last. Chachamim come and they say, ben shenafal isur betchila ben besof, doesn't matter whether it fell into the beginning or the end, eno asur sheyebo kedei lachmitz. It's not going to be asur unless it's going to be machmitz. So says the Gemara, v'tizbera, are you going to tell me that? V'amar Abaye says, lo shanu ela shekadam v'silek et ha'isur. That's only if you were going to be makadem and you took away the isur. Aval lo kadam v'silek et ha'isur. But if you were not makadem v'silek et ha'isur, it's going to be asur. Meaning if you didn't take away the isur, it's still going to be asur right now. Right? So he comes and he says, Chizkiya damar keman. So who's going, who does Chizkiya say like? Elahacha, but rather beroin kamipalge. Do we say roin et ha'eter kilu eno? You understand what that means? Do we look at the heter as if that it's not here? You remember we said, what was the case? We had yain nesech, yain heter, and mine. When the two yains get mixed up, what happens? Yain nesech that gets mixed up with yain ergil. מה? הלך הכל. מה קורה אם יש לך המון יין היתר? לא משנה. למה? מין ממינו. חזק וברוך. מה קורה? יש מספיק מים לבטל את היין נסך. There's enough water, which is מין שאינו מינו, לבטל את היין נסך. So יש כלל רואים את ההיתר כאינו. זאת אומרת, אני לא מסתכל על היין, זאת אומרת. היין של היתר. אז מה? אני רק מסתכל על המים ועל היין נסך. במים מבטל את היין נסך, ומילה, הכל מותר. אז זה מחלוקת, זה מה שאומר, ברואין כמפלגה. לחיזקיה לתלה הוא לא סובר את הכלל של רואין, שכאילו אני רואה שהיין לא נמצא בכלל, ואז מילה המים מבטל את היין נסך. לרבי יוחנן אני כן סובר את זה. So says the Gemara, umitle לרבי יוחנן רואים, does רבי יוחנן actually hold of this concept of רואים את היין כאילו שאינו, ואז המים מבטל את היין נסך? ובא מיני רבסי עם רבי יוחנן, he asked a question from יוחנן. שני כוסות, a person has 2 cups of wine, אחד של חולין ואחד של תרומה, ומזגן, right? They put the water in order to drink it. Remember in the olden days they had to do meziga, right, of water in order to dilute the wine. The wine was so powerful, if you didn't put water, it was impossible to drink it. Okay? Now he comes and he says like this. He says, right? ומזגן, וריבן זה בזה. Oh, Ken. So says the Gemara, right? He says when you have 2 cups of wine, one of them of chuli, one of them truma, they mix it with the water in order to dilute it. And then they get mixed up together. So he says, what's the halacha? So lo pashala, he didn't answer the safek. So meikara lo pashala lo vasof pashala. He says, no. At the beginning he wasn't poshet, but at the end he was poshet. Right? And therefore he comes and he says, Itmar Nami was also stated, you come, you look at it as if that it's not there, the wine, you take the water, and the water is going to annul it. 2 dots. זה הכלל. מין במינו is במשהו, שלא במינו ונותן טעם. says the Gemara, Rav Shmuel Dam Nitzar Rav Shmuel comes and he says, כל איסורין שבתורה Beminan, b'mashu. Are you listening? This is halacha l'maaseh, by the way. Kol isurin shebat Torah. If it's going to be min mimino, it's going to be b'mashu. Shelo beminan benoten tam. Le'atuye, what is it coming to include us? Le'atuye, kol isurin shebat Torah. It's coming to include everything. Rabbi Yochanan Shakish Amar he says, no. Kol isurin shebat Torah ben miminan b'shel miminan. Doesn't matter whether it's mimino b'shel mimino. Betam benoten tam. Chutz mi tevel v'yayin nesech, except for tevel and yayin nesech. Beminan is b'mashu. Shelo beminan benoten tam. V'zeh hakela le'atuye tevel. So it's coming to include tevel. You know what tevel is? Untithed produce that they didn't take off Trumot Umasrot. Tanya Kavate de Rav Shmuel, Tanya Kavate de Rabbi Yochanan el-Shakish. We learned the right Tanya according to Rav Shmuel. We learned according to Rabbi Yochanan el-Shakish. Tanya Kavate de Rabbi Shmuel, Kol Yisur Shabbat Torah b'minan b'mashu, shlo b'minan b'noten tam. So this is like Rav Shmuel. Tanya Kavate de Rabbi Yochanan el-Shakish, Kol Yisur Shabbat Torah ben b'minan b'shlo b'minan b'noten tam. It's always noten tam, except for Tevel v'yayin nesech, that if it's going to be b'minan b'mashu, Shelo b'minan noten tam. So says the Gemara, Bishlema yayin nesech. I understand yayin nesech mishum chumra, because it's a chumra of the kochavim. That's why it's going to be b'mashu. But he says b'may tam tevel. why tevel is so important. You're putting in the same category yain nesech and tevel. Why is tevel so important that filu is b'mashu? Usually everything else is going to be benoten tam. So answers the Gemara, ke'etero kach isuro. Just like the eter, so is the isur. What does that mean? The tevel is permitted only after you took off the trumot u'masrot. So Damar Shmuel says, chita acha poteret kol kli. When you take off one chita, that's poteret the entire kli, right? Which means that it's got chashivut to come and to be poter. So too, there's going to be a chashivut to prohibit the entire tarovet. Just like one chita prohibits the entire kli, so too, right? One chita visur because of tevel is oser the entire kli. We also learned this in a Braita. Tevel aser b'choshu b'mino. Only if it's in the same species. Shelo b'mino benoten tam.